Right, so here's a really messed up, confusing looking project from the latest Hertz single. It came out on Friday. Let's turn it down a bit. It's a dance floor record. This is pre-mastering, pre-mix kind of. Let's have a look, we'll find out. Well, it should tell me here. We're at -3, -2. See, this is down here. Oh, down here. So it's jumping around a bit. So it's good. It needs to be more punchy. I mean, it's good on first listen. So let's just have a look at the core elements, so we can see what we got. We got a folder of drums here. I took a bounce. This is me. This is the difference between mixing and writing tunes, right? I was saying earlier to someone, I'm not too sure, I find it really hard to make music sometimes because I make so many sounds. Like, I've made so many splice packs that haven't got my name on it. I've made so many sounds for other people that they've used in their records. It makes, you know, so when I sit down and write my own music, I sometimes get lost and think, oh, my sound that I did with this, and if I do that and this. So what I start doing is I'm bouncing out my drums and just using them as they are, and just so I can't get involved in mixing or sound design or using other people's presets, which sounds bizarre, but I just find it more inspiring because I don't overthink things. So here is just a bounce of the drums, right? And then I've just taken a cut of the kick and the snare, these ones here, because I wanted them louder. Instead of having to cut the beat up properly, I just layered them on top. Doesn't cause phasing issues because I'm not adding any plugins and stuff to it. So I just done that quickly.
So it's literally just a double up of the wave.
With the kick and the snare. This is the snare, this is the kick. Just so I could make it a bit louder without having to spend time messing around, I think, looking at this. Then I've grabbed some drum fills. One of them is a Virtual Riot drum fill, and I've probably got it in time. I don't know what this one is here. I've just been on Splice and just grabbed a few things just to fill it in. So I've got my drums. Drums, as I say, I've already made. There's some Amon edits. Amon's, I run them for a load of hardware and they sound terrible, but don't know. And then if we look at the basses, the basses, where are they? There's a Reese somewhere. Oh, here we go. There's another folder in there. Probably this main Reese that we was just looking at earlier. Yeah, that is the Reese that we was looking at earlier. That became the main drop, and I think it drops on F. Yeah, it drops on F, and it goes like that. Lovely little number. The first part of the drop has a chord stab on it, which I bounced to audio, which is somewhere here, I think. Yeah, probably with a bass on it as well. Hold on. That's just the first part of it. It was just an F minor chord. It was actually in the sample pack I made for Splice, so I ended up using some of my own sounds from the sample pack. And that one as well. That's in the sample pack. Just sounded cool together. And then it rolls into a kind of mad section with chopped up basses. Where is that? Oh, that's like a pitch and Reese and stuff to bring it in there, and a reactor sub. Whee! And then it goes into these mad basses, which are a lot of audios chopped up. So I've made something called chicken bass and layered it with, I think, a Splice sample. So it'd probably be the chords. Yeah, and then into these things. And to get that kind of wonky sound, you would have almost like fades on it. So they don't start on the beginning of the beat. It goes into it. So it makes it sound wob, 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 wob. Where, but yeah, you can sit and play with that for ages, but you need some form of sound at the start, even if it's like almost silence. Looks like it's silence. And then it just kind of evolves into this. Yeah, there's some question and answer. Serum sound, jungle sub, which got that movement on it, like when we was designing a Reese. So when it goes up and down notes, it speeds up, and yeah, when you play them together, they kind of, it's got a nice got a cool sound to it, and so on. And then I was like, okay, I built an intro out of splice samples, I think, which is crazy. I made this tune on my on this laptop on my sofa. I didn't even go to the studio. Yeah, some like Brahms or whatever you call them, some reverse sounds. I'll play the song after this properly. Chopped up some bits. Tom roll. My favourite sound in the entire intro is this. I love it. I think that's a good point. I can sample some more of that, but yeah, it just goes. Just like it. It's my favourite, you know. Oh, and then I don't get done for copyright now. I sampled Wu-Tang Clan, I think, and just chopped up Ruckus. Where is it here? Ruckus, and then yeah. Then I exported it all as stems and took it into Cubase. Let's look at how I mixed it quickly. So I stemmed it out. Put it into Cubase because it's easier for me to understand mixing wise. It's a lot more traditional than Ableton, and it's the same as Logic or Pro Tools. You know, they just look slightly different, but at least everything's on the left for a start. You know what I mean? So again, I've like chopped out. This time I've chopped out the break, the kicks. I've ended up. There's the original, and then I layered it with something. I don't know. You can't even hear it. Cut out some of the percussion, got the snare, and then they sounded a bit disjointed, so I created some serum layers of white noise hi-hats, which is really simple to do. You just put some white noise in here and then draw an envelope shape on it like this. Make sense? So this here is creating the shape of the hi-hats. Really simple. If you want to know how to do it, just ask one of your lecturers, they'd be able to tell you. And then just chopped out some of the drum fills and just sort of made it so the drums, I had more control of them. Makes sense? So it wasn't just a mess. Tidied everything up, and then I had control of each individual element. Music wise, I rendered it pretty much the whole intro together. I'd kind of had it balanced in Ableton anyway. Sound effects wise, rendered most of them together, and I just much prefer everything just clean and in audio, and I could go through and just put any adjustments I need to on them. Make sense?
Yeah, so everything that you bounced out of Ableton Live was all at 0 before you brought it into...
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, pretty much, because it was all kind of with my method that we was talking about earlier in that ballpark whilst I was writing. That method allows me to write without getting worried about mix downs as well. I'm just like, yeah, write tunes. I think, you know, if it sounds all right, it sounds all right. Whereas before, yeah, it could be a world of pain if I got things wrong. So I've rendered the basses. They might be turned down a bit, you know, but yeah. So these basses here, I've probably made a conscious decision to turn these down to allow myself to have a bit more headroom if I needed it. Chopped up basses. Yeah, so that's that Reese here. But I also brought the Reese in here. If I needed it, I'd probably turn it down here. So I've got access to the original Reese if I wanted to reprogram it. So it's all about thinking about things. Thought maybe I might need that Reese. So I ended up putting it in the project, bouncing the MIDI out. That's it, simple stuff like this. And then I mixed it. Okay, there's be plugins on, you know, different things, and we could go through them all, but it'd be pretty standard stuff like EQ. Well, that's using a bit of mid-side in dynamic mode, which is not the most obvious thing, but you know, exciters, which is I don't even know what we're on, a bass or something. We're an exciter. I'm just trying to get more out of the bass in certain frequencies, and an exciter would add more harmonics rather than just using an EQ, which would just push out frequencies. Harmonics add exciters, and distortion add harmonics at different, and so on. So I've just used my ears, messed around with it, and then I've sent it all to groups, and the groups would be quite simple, or buses in Logic. So I've got a drum group, which is this one here, and I've got nothing on it. I've got a bass group, which is just sidechaining off a kick and a snare, even though these are different to what I showed you earlier. My vocals, I've groups, just taking a bit of the lows out. Oh, and the percussion I've grouped, and I used... Okay, so one good thing to remember, if you remember from this lecture, if you've got a group of percussion, it's very tonal. And if you want to make percussion sound less tonal, you've got to sweep EQs and take some of the information out, like I've done here. Because with it in, let's see what it sounds like. It could kind of like add almost a tone to your mix that you don't need. So instead of just cutting it, hard cutting percussion, just sweep some EQs around, keep it all in the mix and stuff. But that wasn't the greatest example. But yeah, always like really think about your percussion, how it sounds. And compression, like these types of compressors, there's like a UAD version of a Fatso. Is it a Fatso? Distressor, sorry. These compressors are amazing on drums. So this one's by Plug-in Alliance, I believe. But yeah, if you want to hear compression and learn compression, this is one of my favourites for doing that, because it's quite obvious how compression sounds. And my advice about compressors is make it sound good. Forget about the theory. Just like move the attack and release until things start to sound like cool. Do you know what I mean? And that's what you should do with all plugins. Make it so it sounds cool somehow in your head. Not worry too much about the theory. All right, I understand attack and release times and stuff. Ratios, I get it. It still confuses me. I get it. What's all these other knobs? I don't know, but I just twiddle them until it sounds cool. Do you know what I mean? And that's how I like to try and get a sound out of stuff. Like we go in and get a sound out of this equipment, you know. And that's the most important thing when you're using equipment and plugins. Kind of have a safety net because you understand enough, but also make things talk, make things sound good, you know. And then the master bus. So we had a problem with this. So Futurebound owns Viper. We released this record. It wasn't a problem, but he was like, you need to get a bit more this out of it, a bit more of that out of it. And I was like, I'm trying. Oh no, it's more bass, more bass, more bass. And I was like, I'm trying. But me being an idiot, I added all these plugins on the master bus in thinking it was done. Hold on, there's just two gains for something muted. Okay, I'll go through them actually. Right, so there's this thing here, number one, which is clarity, which is some sort of, just think of it as AI, and it's kind of rebalancing some frequencies for you when it's playing. It's not essential. Then there's an equalizer, and I use my ears on this mid-side mode, and I probably, yeah, it looks like tiny little movements, but that's what it is in mastering. Then ignore these two gain tools, which I'll explain why they're there in a minute. This is a de-esser, and it's modelled off of a famous, I don't even know how you say it, Vice? Vice hardware unit, but the plugin's apparently identical. I've never used it. Then you got Soothe, and Soothe is like an AI thing which finds rogue frequencies for you, but this is like touching like half a dB here and there, because if you overuse plugins like this, you'll kill the dynamics of a mix, because it basically just grabs hold of it, and then your mix starts to sound a bit lifeless and sterile. Then there's another bit of EQ in mid-side, which is killing the phase. Don't know why I'm doing that, but there we go. There it is, sitting there doing its thing. Then I probably added... I've tried to sort the lows out, make sure the lows were in mono, and there was a reason for that. But then the problem was this thing here, right? And at some point, and I forgot that I'd done it, I just quickly put this on. It's a multi-band compressor, which, if you think about it, it's a bit like an EQ. You can boost bands and frequencies in volume, but it also compresses them. And I don't know why I did that, but I'd mixed the record with that on it, like... Oh, not the hi-hat, that'd be weird. And it was grabbing and pushing and pulling the record, and it had the whole sound of the tunes in that. If I took that off, it just became a different mix down. It didn't have that aggression. So I was like, right, I'm going to live with it. And then I tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it. And then what I'd found was, where the label, or Brendan, Futurebound, was asking me for more bass, I'd not realised that I had the attack all the way down on this low band. And what that does is, it won't let any of the sub through. No matter how much I kept turning it up, it was just saying, no, you're not getting any louder. So I'm on the phone to Brendan, I can't get any more bass. It went backwards and forwards. And then one day I was like, holy shit. And the attack basically allows more of the bass to come through before it's squashed back down. And then I was like, oh, it's got loads of bass. You know, and this is like the annoying things with like when you're mixing and mastering your own stuff, you will come across problems like this, because I've just not only done all that stuff in Ableton, I've written the tune to start off with, been creative, designed a lot of the sounds, mixed it and made the tune in Ableton, then imported it into this, then I've gone through and tweaked everything else, and then I've gone at some point thinking it's finished, started mastering it, and then something's happened and I've gone back a few stages, and then blah 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 blah, and then it got to the end and I'm like, I can't get any more bass out of it. But I figured it out in the end, by luck, I think. And then one last thing, I just thought I needed some more aggression in the top end, and just using EQs and stuff, sometimes it can just sound a bit crap. So I just used a bit more distortion or harmonics or whatever to boost some of the top end. Right, so it's a long-winded way of doing it, and I would say most of this stuff that is on there is irrelevant, but, you know, it was there and it had to stay. There was one other thing, because I was on the move, is this thing here, which is called Access Analog. I don't know if any of you have heard it, and it's essentially a server, and I can connect to a plethora of mastering gear that's in Colorado. And this thing, we just do it now quickly.
Oh, that's where you use the analog gear remotely, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So we're going to connect, and I'm just going to grab anything. I'm not saying use
you
this.
do it in real time, right?
This is real time, yeah. Okay, it's saying we've got a VPN issue, so it's obviously there's the network here.
Yeah.
So what it does is it's got robotics, which are, imagine if we took all these off, all these dials, and we put little like turning things on it. So when I say if I pulled this up, that would appear on my screen, and as I turn the plug-in, which looks like a VST plug-in, it do that.
That's mental.
But then it fires it all back in real time. So with this record, I wanted a bit of sound of analog, so that was why it was in there. I think I used a massive passive EQ. I think I used some transformers. I think I used a few different bits of analog gear, which in this particular record reduced some of the transients, because it was too much, and made it sound more round and more polished. And my thing is a record ever finished? Probably not to me, but at some point, I don't like, there's certain things when I listened to the bounce earlier just a minute ago, and I'll be like, it's all right, you know, but you can't keep going forever with mix downs and mastering and stuff like that. You have to draw a line.